Just days after the reveal of Subnautica 2, we have 3 new pieces of concept art to take a look at. These aren't fully rendered in-game assets like the screenshots from the reveal, but they are an artistic interpretation of what the game might look like and give us some room to speculate. When visiting the Subnautica website, the eagle-eyed among you will have noticed there is a brand new image sat behind the area where you can subscribe to the Subnautica newsletter. This isn't the clearest image, but luckily I've managed to find a version without all the text and other general blurriness. This art clearly shows a concept for one of the game's biomes, although whether this is just an art piece or something that is actively being worked on is hard to say. You'd think that as this is one of the first pieces of concept art released for the game that it's probably quite important and likely a biome that is being worked on, but for now all we have is speculation. As far as I can tell, this looks like a completely new area that we haven't seen before and has huge drooping underwater plants covered in what looks like bioluminescent yellow and orange bulbs. These look a bit similar to the great hanging vines seen in the screenshots for the yet to be named purple biome, although I think these are different enough to reasonably assume this isn't the same zone. Our concept art shows this biome to be close to the surface, as you can clearly see the water's edge at the top of the image. Another prominent detail is the inclusion of a submarine that looks like the one we saw in the trailer and screenshots, which I'm going to call the Tadpole based on the names of those screenshots. We don't really get any better detail about the vehicle here, but it does reinforce the idea that this is a shallow water and early game exploration vehicle similar to the Seamoth. There wasn't anything else that particularly stuck out to me about this image, although I do like this little blue underwater seagrass, as otherwise the seafloor around here looks quite barren. Most of the foliage seems to be growing down out of the rocks rather than up from the seafloor. Concept art number 2 shows a more enclosed space featuring a cave, although again this isn't too far from the surface as you can clearly see the light pouring into the area from a hole at the top of the image. This image is named Generic Cave Color Sketch 02, so it doesn't help with any kind of name for the biome, but I suppose it does confirm this is a cave, if you somehow needed help with that. This image has all sorts of strange looking coral, large and small, and I particularly like these large bulb-like structures with the wiry tentacles coming off them. This one in the centre seems to be giving off a lot of bubbles, so maybe these could act as a way for the player to refill their oxygen tank like the brain coral from Subnautica or the oxygen plant from Below Zero. The bottom half of the image seems to have a bit of a greenish tint, which kind of reminds me of the brine pools found in the Lost River, just on a much smaller scale, which I think looks really cool. This could also be an example of the environmental dangers that are supposed to exist in Subnautica 2, so maybe getting too close to this could hurt you. On the left hand side we see a massive coral structure which looks to be much bigger than the player. It's kinda hard to tell if this is one plant or multiple growing close together, but either way it's definitely huge. Looking towards the centre left of the image we see this cave extends quite a long way, with the ceiling being supported by large pillars. It's possible this could be a large enclosed early game area, or maybe the cave simply reaches a dead end somewhere out of view. We don't see any creatures in this image, but I imagine they would be trying to hide amongst all the coral and plants for protection as the diver at the centre of the image moves around. The diver themselves doesn't really give us anything new or interesting to talk about. It looks like the dive suit here is just a generic diver template rather than the specific Altera designs we've seen previously, but of course this is concept art, so that's to be expected really. Our third and final concept art shows the tadpole in a thermal spires type biome. This place reminds me a lot of the thermal spires you can find in the dunes in the original Subnautica and appears to be quite open and exposed. We also see the shark-like creature that we've seen before in previous screenshots, along with some tiny purple fish. It's hard to say what these are, but my guess is that they're these little guys with the hole in their centre that we've seen before. The openness of this zone makes me think it could be a leviathan's hunting ground, as they need plenty of room to move around. You can still see light at the top of this image, so I don't think this biome is far below the surface, but I also don't think it's really shallow either. I'd say of the 3 areas we've seen in these images, this one is definitely the deepest, but not so deep that light is failing to reach the seafloor. To wrap up, the Subnautica homepage gives us another look at the dive suit seen in the reveal, along with high-res renders of 2 creatures. I don't think there's anything particularly new here, but it does give us names for these 2 creatures, with the larger one being known as a hammerhead and the smaller fish being titled Half Moon, presumably because of the shape of its body. So which of these concept biomes is your favourite? Leave a comment down below and let me know. Personally, I can't quite decide, as I like all of them for different reasons. Remember to take a look at the Aletho plushie while you still can, and use code Aletho15 for 15% off. And if somehow you haven't seen my breakdown of the Subnautica 2 trailer, be sure to click right here to check that out next. And special thanks to my patrons, Asmodeus Matthias, Graham DeLoye, Baron Windy and Immortal for making this video possible.